more interaction.
Okay, more interactions.
Like asking questions during the class,
Okay.
or sort of like making the tables or groups, whatever,
Yeah.
like sort of a problem during class
Yeah.
related to what you're learning right now. That
Yeah.
helps a lot, in my opinion.
She really asked for people's opinion on what to do differently. Like halfway through, she asked, to present some ideas to change the class.
Then just join a professor joining a group. It's like, oh, what do
Yeah.
you guys think? What are you talking about?
Yeah, like they're there and they're present to be able to answer questions.
Understanding that the motivation is there, the want to succeed is there, but because there's so much coming at you at once, it can get discouraging real fast.
I think lectures can get long,
Yeah.
and they can lose my attention quickly sometimes.
Yeah.
But putting interactive, maybe videos or something to catch your eye besides a PowerPoint slide
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
really helpful to just regain that focus. I
Yeah.
think students can tell when a professor wants to be there and wants to teach the class and is passionate about
Yeah.
it.
Wow, it was great to be able to see some of those students, give their thoughts on what's going on with the engineering curriculum.
Yeah. So welcome, Ryan. Welcome to Coach's Corner. Can you share with us about first what you teach, and then do you see what the students are saying in the video? Do you see that in your own class?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ryan Meuth. I teach computer science primarily for the School of Augmented Intelligence, School of Computing and Augmented Intelligence, and I see a lot of this. I really feel it deeply, and seeing students sort of share this sort of candidly is really, really exciting, because as a teacher, I don't get to see what the experience on the student side is so much. I know what it's like standing up in front and behind on the grading side and stuff like that, and we might get some feedback from like course evaluations and stuff like that. But hearing them talk about it and how they're clearly passionate about it, and then what can help them is really exciting, really fun. Yeah.
I mean, it was classic hearing them talk about like not wanting to sit in lecture for an hour and 15, which, I think any person would kind of be challenged about that. But so I mean, like what are we expecting in terms of value for students, in their learning experience? Like what should they expect as students how should they engage?
So for the classes that I see fit, or the classes that I teach, what I see as the biggest value for students is as much of that like personal interaction as you can squeeze out of the university, because that's what we're here for, right? You can go and check out a book and try to learn it on your own, but it's the person guiding you through it that is the value add over an independent study or anything like that. So a lot of that like personal interaction, that student that was talking about, like you can tell the teachers that actually want to be here. Yeah. That's the one that speaks to me, right? Because the class will reflect whatever energy you bring into it, right? So if you go in and be like, I'm excited to be here, we're going to learn some cool stuff. This is going to help you in your career goals or just in your academic studies and stuff like that, then that energy is what they reflect back at you, and everybody has a better experience, right? And then the other things of like making it less about sort of a one, the sage on the stage being a presentation-oriented classroom and things like that. That is also part of that value add, right? Yeah. You don't learn by watching as much as you do by doing. Yeah. So having some things where the students are doing stuff helps a whole lot with breaking up that attention span, helping them feel engaged in the classroom, and then hammering home whatever it is you're learning.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have very large courses in some instances. So how did you recognize, and it sounds like you're natural anyways, at making sure that students are engaged and participating, but how did you recognize that there potentially was a need for more engagement?
It's been a journey. I started out with really small classes when I started teaching. It was me and maybe like 5 other students. So you could build like, and that was not here at ASU. Okay. That was a totally different place. but it was really, really small classes, and you could build like a personal relationship and know exactly what they're experiencing and what their challenges are. And then I came to ASU and immediately had 40, 150 size classes, and it changes those dynamics, right? So I was looking for ways to sort of bridge that gap and figure out what are the students experiencing and things like that. Mid-course surveys was the first thing I went to, and then more often doing things like muddiest points to sort of help get that feedback from my class more regularly.
Right.
But the engagement during those review sessions is usually really, really high, and they're asking questions, and they're like, what about this and stuff like that, because they see their question up on the board.
Sure.
They are willing to engage with it or something like their question, and they feel like they're getting that feedback and engagement, and that
You're listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say, because time is of the essence, right?
Right.
And there's so much to teach. Like beyond that, what advice would you give to other faculty who are maybe on the edge of potentially or struggling with motivating students, or how would you recommend getting started for other faculty?
Getting started, I mean, beginning at the beginning, right? The impression you make on the first day of class is going to set the tone and the energy for the entire rest of the class, right? And I think having that introduction be really like, I am a human person, and this is my life, and this is why I like this topic, and this is why I'm here, and this is why I think you're here. And then having a little conversation about that as you're covering the syllabus, I think that sets the tone a lot. I talk about, I love computers, I love building stuff. Here's some projects that I've done. Here's a cute game that I made for my wife for my anniversary present, right? Or something like that, right? Just show, like, this is how I apply what I know in my life and stuff like that. And that starts so many conversations later with my students. And that makes them more comfortable talking to me if I'm not just like a teaching robot or something.
Right, and showing that you don't, like that one young lady mentioned, you can tell who doesn't potentially want to be there.
I want to be here,
Yeah.
right? And I'm trying to communicate that as clearly as I can. And I think, and then maintaining some of that energy, which can be really challenging in a long semester throughout the class. And it's the first step of, even as part of your presentation, coming back to why are we here, right? So I start out with like, why am I here? Why are you here? And then as I'm teaching things in specific topics, making sure to touch on, this is why this is cool. This is what this is going to do for you. This is how it's used in industry, or here's a news point. Even just a casual mention of it, right? Being connected to the content and how the students are going to apply it in the future, or more than beyond the test, more than beyond the homework at the end of the week. That helps a whole lot in keeping students motivated and attentive, and it starts some great conversations, right? Stuff like that. And then that sort of level of engagement and support, even at sort of the macro level that Modius Points works on, that goes a long way too, to make sure that students are they feel like they're being heard and part of the class.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, kind of off topic, but is there anything else that you do to motivate students beyond using the Muddiest Points? What about like grouping students and getting them to talk in class? Is there anything else you can recommend to faculty in terms of motivating students?
Yes. I like a noisy classroom, right? So a noisy.
Not everyone does.
I know. But it's about trying to manage it in a way that is sort of productive and goal oriented, right? So I do a lot of stuff to sort of break up the attention deficit issues and stuff like that. People, I mean, honestly, I get bored after 10 minutes of watching a thing, right? If it's not something that is either moving along or re-engaging me in some way, my attention tends to drift. And so figuring out a way to break up my class into topic introductions, activities, things like that. And it doesn't have to be hard. Like the student was saying, just ask questions, right? But like honestly asking questions rather than be like, does anybody have any questions? Right? Or right? And no, and then you look, you wait for 2 seconds and say no response, and you move on.
Do you tell students that you want a noisy classroom?
I do, yeah, because I set that's a setting the tone thing. So I have them talk to each other during the first class. Simple like icebreaker questions like. What is the one that I usually go to? Oh, I ask them to introduce themselves to each other, where they grew up, and then depending on the class, like for my intro classes, it's always like, why are you here? What do you want to do? Right? Sort of thing, and trying
money.
to a lot of make money. I love that one because it's like of course, and then there's the esoteric things like. Maybe not so esoteric, but like I want to build video games, or I want to
change the world.
Yeah, I want to change the world, and I want to start my own company or whatever kind of stuff. And I think those are great too. But honestly, acknowledging like these are the reasons why we're all here. We all have different reasons to be here, and sort of stuff like that. But having that conversation at the beginning and making them talk to each other introduces them to their peers. And it sets the expectation that, hey, you're going to be asked to talk to each other during this class,
Surprise.
right? Yes, absolutely. Maybe depending on the class, I'll put them in groups of 3 or 4 so that they have a sort of set group that they know and get used to, and we can maybe work on longer term things together during class, or just ad hoc talk to your neighbor type stuff. But setting that expectation of you're going to talk to each other, and you should, and you have things to learn, right? And that's part of what where did you grow up conversation starts is what I tell them when I do that. I ask them, okay, who grew up farthest from campus, right? And I get India and Saudi Arabia and China and all over the world, right? And then I'm like, okay, who grew up closest to campus? And then they're like Chandler and Tempe, and I'm like, who's down the street, right? And stuff like that. And I was like, this is a great thing because it's very unique to ASU to have such a breadth of population, and those are backgrounds that lead people to approach problem solving in different ways. Those are experience backgrounds that you can learn from, stuff like that. And I tell them that the students that they're each other's greatest resource. There's 100 of them in the room and only one or 3 or 4 of me with my TAs in the room, but there's hundreds of them, right? And you can learn from each other, and we're all going through the content together, but you're all going to have strengths and weaknesses as you're engaging that content. So one time when you're weak, someone else in your group is going to be strong on it and they can help you. And the opposite is going to happen too, right? You're never going to always be the one that's struggling to catch up. And helping each other is your first greatest resource within reason.
And then do you keep that up throughout the semester so that it's just that message of building community and togetherness it's repeated throughout the semester?
Yeah. And a lot of that is just making sure that they're talking to each other. I try to structure the problems that I present in my classes as things that are a little bit chunky, so we can spend 5 minutes of them, bashing against it or trying to find a solution, and they can talk to each other, and then we can talk about a solution, or they can represent the solution to the rest of the class, or something like that we can take apart, and making it interactive in that way goes a long way to students feeling like they're a part of the classroom rather than a passive participant.
And you mentioned like not wanting to be the sage on the stage, and something you said really important was the idea of breaking up your class and your lecture. So you have that initial introduction, they wrestle with something, there's an activity, and then you kind of structure your class in that way. And so do you find that helps motivate students?
Absolutely. Because the students want to come to a class where they feel like they are getting something out of it, and sometimes sitting and listening doesn't fulfill that need, right? And I still struggle with this. When I'm building a lecture, I'm doing a lot of work to distill a set of concepts into something that's on the slides and doing the examples and stuff like that, right? That work that I'm doing is the experience I actually want my students to have, right? So presenting the result of my work isn't necessarily the best experience or learning experience for students. So having something that they can do, and then being able to say, oh, now I can do this thing, and they've actually done it and they've got something to show for it, that engages them and makes them want to be there more. Right. It's the value add of I'm a person in this class, and being in class has a value to me because we're doing things, right? And that's going to help me be better.
So we have an education term, right? Learner-centered activities, experiences, whatever, and it's very much a challenging aspect as an instructor to kind of almost give up control, not know what's going to have happen, and then expect something useful and productive back,
right?
So that you could work with it and kind of go through that. So how in your years of experience have you like been able to get through that kind of like sharing, or kind of like giving them an opportunity to do that? Like that seems very challenging.
It is very challenging, and you should be ready for it to be. The first few times you're going to try it, it may not go great, right? But doing it in small sample ways, and then really thinking about like what happened, what went wrong, what went right, stuff like that. The thing that I don't do this much anymore, but the thing that helped me a lot with sort of maintaining control in the classroom was setting time bounds on things. So if we were going to work on something, I'm going to put a timer up there and make sure that when that timer has a nice loud thing on it, and when that timer is done, then we all come back and start talking about it. And then preempting as it's like basic classroom attention management stuff of saying like, here's what we're going to work on this for so much amount of time, and then keeping on track and things like that. But you're going to stumble, you're going to learn some things about what works for you and what works for your students, and what works for the topic that goes. And it's fine to try something and it not work out, and maybe you want to tweak it, or maybe you want to do it differently, or something like that. But trying a lot of stuff, reading and looking at resources of what people have tried and how it's worked, stuff like that. And then it's like doing improv. You kind of have to be on your toes a little bit. There's not a script to the lecture. You might be relying on those slides to say this is what we're doing next.
There's no teleprompter.
Yeah, there's no teleprompter. But if you're planning for improv, that gives you room to do it and correct and then move in. But if you're like, I have exactly 2 minutes to do this activity, and then I have to get onto this because we got to finish at 11:47 or something like that. That's not going to go super well. But if you build in some time, and then if you plan for flexibility, then you can have an active classroom that I think will serve you better than just presenting information consistent, like and having the students be in a passive way. It's a little risky, and you learn a lot, but you learn fast when you've got 4 classes a semester and hundreds of students and stuff like that. And you can build up a great tool set and watch those end of course evaluations go up.
Yes, exactly.
But it also seems like you said before, you kind of have to model for the students, like, this question could have been better if we kind of identified that, or like you look at a response, you're like, I don't know really what I'm supposed to do with this. Like, if you told me like, I don't know which equation to use or whatever, then, that kind of like gives them an opportunity also to kind of like be like, this didn't turn out how I exactly wanted it. This is how it could be better.
Yeah, totally. You often, have to teach students not only the content, but how to engage with whatever activity you're doing, right? So you don't just say, for the first time, okay, we're doing a think, pair, share. Here's the question. See you in 5 minutes, right? You say, like, this is what think, pair, share is. This is what you're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. Why are we doing this? And really making that explicit so that there's buy-in and they know how to do it well, right?
So they're not just staring at each other.
Yeah, exactly, right? And sometimes that will totally happen the first time you do it and be like, okay, you two talk to each other and you two talk to each other and stuff like that, right? So you have to train them to interact sometimes and things like that. And train them to ask good questions, and that those are skills that are going to be useful for them all throughout, right? So, that's a metacognitive practice of knowing, what is it that I am struggling with, and how do I express that more than here's 2 words or a bullet point, right? How do I get to something that's actionable?
Which engineers know how to do.
Yeah, I don't know how many emails where I'm like, they send me something like, my code doesn't compile, and that's it, right? It's like, what is the problem you're working on? What are the errors that you're getting?
Who is this?
Yeah, exactly. What class are you in? Stuff like that. That's very frustrating. But then I think they get it after I send them my list of questions of this is where how you get effective help.
Yeah.
And now there's a module in my class on how to ask for help. Right? Stuff like that. That is about the process of engaging in the class.
Ryan, thank you for being here. We've spoken a lot about student motivation based on the student voices. And so do you have any final kind of lasting comments in terms of the power of motivation for students, maybe why it's necessary, or just tips for faculty?
I mean, it comes back to, bringing the energy to the classroom that you want to see in your students. And that is, why am I here, and how can we make this a conversation more than a presentation? And I think that makes a huge difference in engaging students and making them want to come back to your class and participate.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. This is very fun.
And if you have any troubles, you know who to contact, right?
I do.
Contact the Learning and Teaching Hub. We can help you identify the best strategy that's going to work for your classroom. Click on the resources below.